I'm Rebecca Britt, and this is the Stable Moments Podcast, the show where we discuss all things related to the foster care system and early childhood trauma, from foster parents, trauma experts, former foster kids, and beyond. We'll take a deep dive into the complexities of the foster care crisis in an effort to better understand how to fix it.
So much for coming on. I know that I saw you share your story on YouTube, and I thought that you would be a great story to share here on the podcast because you are a foster and adoptive mom of 8. Holy smokes. So give us a little bit of your backstory. Where are you from? How did you meet your husband? How did you choose to get into the world of foster and adoption?
Well, I'm from the good old southern state of Mississippi, and me and my husband met probably 9 years ago. We met through a church affiliate. I was a youth director at my home congregation, and his youth director basically set us up. And we exchanged email contacts, and we sent pictures and talked through email for a while. And then after a couple months, we decided to go out on a date. And for a while, things just did not hit off. And I was like, oh, who is this crazy guy? You know, he's busy with everything else in life. But then we end up probably 6 months to a year later, we met back up. And it was like it clicked from then. And it was nonstop from then. We decided to be married. We didn't want to do this long, drawn out wedding. His mother and his aunt did us a small reception. Well, I think we knew going into the game that we wanted children. We would always talk about children. I have always wanted a large family. He's the only child. So, even talking about it, he was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I think I always wanted brothers and sisters growing up, so he could do the large family thing. And we decided we was going to try to have children. And we tried for a while and nothing happened. And we ended up getting testing and things like that. It went to a fertility specialist and had procedures done. And I was told that basically I had unexplained infertility. And they tried to correct what they could, but there was no correcting it. So they told me that my only option was in vitro fertilization. So I'm like, can I reach into my back pocket and pick out $20,000? Let's get this show on the road, Right. But who has $20,000 just sitting around? I don't. So we started to just thinking about that there are other ways to have a family, to build a family. And we started to look into foster care, and we looked into adoption. We looked into overseas adoption, and then we thought we came across adoption from our own county, from our own area, because we were thinking that there are so many children who are right here in our back door who need homes, who need a stable environment. So if we're going to provide a home, why not? Why not try it? So I made a phone call to a local Department of Human Services, got put through to Child Protection Services, and we started an over-the-phone application. And from there, a specialist came out and did a house visit. They did the home study. They checked everything, and we started classes immediately. We went through a couple months of classes, and after that, we were licensed to be foster parents. So the ideal of fostering stemmed from infertility and from still wanting to have a family and wanting to provide a home for those children who need it. And that's how it started.
That's awesome. So when you went into this, I know that as you just said, it's to start a family. Once you realized you were going to be a foster parent, did you know you wanted to foster to adopt only? Were you okay with being the gap to return kids back to their families of origin?
Right. Well, at the time, our state had a dual licensing. So you could do foster care, you could do adoption, or you could do dual and do both. So we decided to be licensed for both. I think at the beginning our mind was not on adoption, but we were also thinking through, we were going to go ahead and get licensed. Why not get a license for both, just in case our mind changed later on down the road? And we sure enough, we ended up getting a call for our first first set of foster children, it happened, I want to say about 2 weeks after we were licensed. We get a call and the lady says, we have a very young sibling set. At the time, they were 11 months and 23 months old. And they were 2 of a 7 sibling set, but because of other circumstances, they were not placing them together. And they asked if we would be interested in fostering these children. So at the time, adoption was not on the board. We were still reunification. That was the process, was reunification. So we was that, like you said, that in between for reunification. So I think that adoption was always in the back of my mind, but my goal was more important to be whatever that child needed me to be at the time.
That's so beautiful. So tell me about that first visit, them walking in your house and what that was all like.
I remember getting that phone call. My husband was at work, and I called my aunt, the same aunt who's here with me now. I called her. I said, Auntie, we have a set of children coming. Can you come over to the house? I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. The house was set up, of course.
Sure.
And at the time, the 2 children were placed in 2 different homes. So they was trying to put them back together.
Okay.
So we had 2 different social workers who were showing up at 2 different times with 2 different children. So they came and they brought the 23-month-old came first. And she was, oh my goodness, she was a beautiful little girl. And she just walked in and my heart dropped. My heart dropped because I looked at her and I saw trauma and I saw fear and I saw pain and I saw suffering. And then my heart knew that you have to do everything that's in your willpower to provide a home for this child, regardless if it's 2 weeks or 2 years or 10 years, it doesn't matter, but it has to be my goal to help her break that fear, break that pain, break that cycle. And that was my goal. And so the first social worker came, and my first emotion was, I don't know. I mean, it was. I'm not gonna cry, but I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel anxiety, but I just felt everything that child showed on her face. And then about an hour and a half later, a separate social worker came and brought the other sibling. And when she saw her brother, because they had never really lived together, she was a 23-month-old. No 23-month-old wants to share her toys, and so she just she didn't know what to do. But like I said, the oldest one just had so much trauma and stuff going on that I immediately went into, I'm like the mama bear, and like no one's gonna go up near her, no one's going to do anything, let her have her way. If she wanna climb to the Empire State Building, let that sister climb to the Empire State Building. So that's I went into a protection mode as soon as those 2 children came into my home. And prayerfully, thankfully, throughout this whole journey, that first sibling set that we fostered ended up being the first sibling set that we adopted.
Oh, that's so great. And how quickly did that happen after you first got them?
Well, we stepped into the picture a ways into the case. Okay, so the case had already been going on, and later on things end up turning, and those children end up free for adoption through the whole TPR process. I know that you're aware of all of that.
Yeah.
And that may have taken, I want to say 2 years. Oh, it may have been almost like a year and 10 months. So we, even through the whole process, we were still doing weekly visits with siblings. We were still doing visits with bio mom, who at that point her rights was not terminated. So we were still doing the whole process, and we were still doing a very vigorous therapy schedule because I knew right off the bat that she needed to be in therapy. And so I went and immediately did that the next week. So we were going through a whole lot of rigorous stuff throughout that time frame. So it may have been like a year and 10 months. And then they were free for adoption. Of course, they had already, during that time, the 6-month time frame had passed. So, once they were freed, it just was a matter of getting the paperwork to the AG's office and getting approvals and getting it back and setting a court date. And, it was about a year and 10 months.
So did you keep your house open to other foster children while you were fostering them, or?
Yes, I did. I did. So while we were still fostering them, our home, at first we set a number of 4 children. Why we set a number of 4 children, I don't know. But we set a number of 4 children. So even in between that time, we did get a call for other children, and we did have some children come in, stay for a week, or some may have stayed for 2 weeks. We did have another sibling set that came in and was eventually there throughout our adoption process of this sibling set, who ended up being reunited with parents. So we did keep our house open because, the whole goal was not just to, I have my child and I'm done with the system. No, my goal was to be what the system needed for whatever child needed it at the time.
I love that. So that child that was reunified, how did you kind of always know that was going to be the path, or?
Well, it was a real that was a very, very, very rocky situation. In the beginning, it was talk of TPR, but parents did what they had to do. They stepped up to the plate. They followed the guidelines, and they did what they had to do, and those children were reunited. And that was actually, so we had two siblings, and then there was a third sibling born into the mix, and we end up getting the third sibling straight from the hospital. So, and during that time, we had having 5 in our home, and then those 3 were reunited.
Yeah, you don't know how many stories I hear of people that were like, we were fine with our 1, or we were fine with our 2, but that birth mom, every time she had a new baby, we were called and we were like, of course we can take the sibling. So they ended up with 4 or 5.
Yep.
Well, I love that story of reunification just because that's the example of the system working. I think you adopting is also a story of the system working, as long as the child is in the best place that they can be. But I always think it's beautiful when parents are given the opportunity and do step up to the plate and get their children back, because we all know children deep down want to be with their biological parents if they can.
Yeah, that's something that I try to stress to people, and I try to stress it to my children. It does not matter what your parents did for you all to be in that place. At the end of the day, that is your parent. They gave you life. You respect them. You love them. You honor them for what they could do at the time that they could do it. And then you have to be willing to forgive them for what they could not do when they could not do it. It is not your job to judge them, but it's your job to be one to pray for them, to just be willing, because I never have been the person to say, she did this, she don't deserve this. No, everybody is in a particular situation at a particular time for a particular reason. And it's not always something that we choose. It could be something that happened by default, or it could be something that we chose to do. But I believe that every human being should have an opportunity and a benefit of the doubt to come back from whatever bad situation they may have stepped into.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that. So let's keep going, because we know that you have 8 children. So and 8 adopted children?
No, so 7 of my children are adopted. Okay. 1 of my children is a biological.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we end up with the first 2 adopted, and then we fostered for a while in between. And then one day I was online and I was looking up at I think it was called Adopt USA, the website where they have like the children listed. And I was looking at some sibling groups, and some kind of way I ended up on the website. I think it's called like Tuesday's Kid or just something like that. But anyway, I ended up on that website and I watched a video of a little girl. And she at the time was 10 years old when she did her video. And it's like looking at her, something just came all over me. I cannot explain it for the life of me, but I immediately the next day, because it was late when I did, I immediately the next day called the county that she was in and said, what's going on with this little girl? So they allowed me to go down and meet her and get her a birthday gift. And we did those type of exchanges for about 4 months while we were trying to get to know one another. And because she had some rough placements in the past and they didn't want to cause her too much stress and trauma by just dropping her into a new family. So we traveled back and forth, did visits, and then they finally approved for her to come to us as a foster to adopt placement. And we went through our 6 months time frame. It was actually a little bit longer, and then we ended up adopting. So she was a single child, no siblings, and she is just, you know how people say you out of your children you always have a match. She's my match out of my children. She's like the firecracker that's in our home. So we end up adopting her. So that made 3 children.
And how old was she when you adopted her?
She was 10 when we first got her, 11 when we adopted.
Okay, so she was the oldest.
She was the oldest in the house. And that was a challenge within itself because, you know, there's a stigma that don't adopt older children, you know. Don't bring older children into your house when you have smaller children. So I had to deal with the backlash of people saying what they wanted to say. But one of the key things that I tell people who are aspiring to foster to adopt, you have to make the decision for yourself. You, your spouse, your partner, or whoever that you're in this journey with, you guys have to make the decisions for your household. And you cannot lean and depend on the decisions, the comments of everyone else around you, because if you do, you're not going to do it. Because we were told the older children, they're nothing but trouble, don't do it. And I'm talking about a child who at the time had lived in almost 20 different foster homes. So of course the track record that they were talking about was there, but I was not going to judge her based upon where she had been. I was judging her for who she was, and I just wanted to give her an opportunity. So that was one of those hurdles that we had to jump over.
Yeah, and do you feel like God called you to just go on? Because the other kids were, you know, you were getting kids in your home, you know, from just phone calls and whoever was available was available. So was this the first time you had gone on this website and looked for a child and had somebody out?
Yeah, I think, well, you know, I had looked at the
Whoops.
She struck me. She struck me, and then, you know, there was, at that point, it was just, she belonged. I knew it. We just had to go through the process, you know.
I love it. Okay, so now you've got 3 kids that are adopted.
That are adopted, and we're still fostering as the county see fit. And then we were actually, we wasn't taking a break from fostering, but at that time we didn't have any other children in our home except our 3 adopted children. And then an agency called about a little boy who at the time was 4. They called and said that we have a little boy we're looking to place. He has siblings, but at the time they were going to be placed somewhere else. So I said, okay. And then we went back and forth, and then they ended up calling back the next week and said, well, would you be interested in taking him as well as his 2 siblings? And of course, absolutely. My mind has always been, if you can do what you need to do to not break up a sibling set, then you do what you have to do. So when they called and they said that, there was not a doubt in my mind. Actually, I told her I wanted to tell you that the first time you called, but I didn't want to tell you how to do what you're doing. So, but anyway,
was there ever a time when you were like, do we have enough room in the house? Like,
well, so let me tell you. So when we first started, we had a 3-bedroom, 2 bedrooms up, 1 bedroom lower. 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath home. We had them set up where there were 3 twin beds in one room, and the other bed had a twin and 2 toddler beds. So we was like, what are we going to do? And one of our children, out of our 3 adopted children, it was on the spectrum. And he had already had some struggles with environment. And we stayed in a suburb, but the constant hustle and bustle of other people around was a struggle for him. So we had already decided that we needed to make a move to go out into the country to find a more serene place where he can be more relaxed in. So we had already started to look for a house in the meantime, between time. So when they called about these other children, I said, well, we got to call the realtor. We got to go back to the drawing board because 3 bedrooms is not going to be enough. We need at least 4 bedrooms, you know? So we end up finding this old farmhouse that's like 30-something years old, needs a buttload of work, you know? But we wanted it because it had everything that we wanted long term. It had a lake on the property. It had a barn. There was an old chicken coop. And, you know, it just was a beautiful place. It's not a big place, just 14 acres and a 4-bedroom farmhouse that we're working on. And when we got the call for DHS about the 3 children, at the time we didn't have this house now. So let me tell you how the time frame went. DHS allowed us to go to the sibling set of 3's county the week before Thanksgiving to do a visit with them in their county. So we drove there, got in with a hotel room. We took our 3 children with us down there to meet them. We did like a day visit where we went to like children's museum, and we went out to eat to the restaurant, and we just had time to spend with the children. And then we drove back home. Well, the next week, which was Thanksgiving break, the adoption specialist agreed to allow the children to come to our county to spend the Thanksgiving break with us. So then they drove them, and that was a 8.5, 9-hour drive.
Wow.
We stopped, so it ended up being almost 10 hours drive.
So they had called you about this sibling set, even you being that many hours away?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. So you can get some kids from anywhere in the state then? Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. These children, I'm all the way at the top of the state, and these children came all the way down. You may as well say the border. You may as well say the Gulf Coast. They came from the Gulf Coast. Wow. So we literally drove all the way to the Gulf Coast the week before Thanksgiving. And then the social worker turned around the week of Thanksgiving and drove them back to us. And they stayed with us over Thanksgiving break. And it was one of the most, it's like every Thanksgiving from then on out, we tried to match to that Thanksgiving, because it was just like, it was unbelievable how, you know, it was a blessing. It was a blessing to us as parents. It was a blessing to the other 3 children who were already adopted. And it was a blessing for the 3 children who were looking for a forever home. You know, you think about children who have already, regardless of how bad the situation is, they were snatched away from their norm. They were placed in an unfamiliar home with unfamiliar people. And depending on if that placement worked, they may have bounced. And, you know, regardless of what a child has going on, behavior, psychological, emotional, a child needs something to call their norm. And if a child does not get something to call their norm, they're going to continue to bounce. And they're going to continue to have behavior flares. They're going to continue to have emotional flares, because they're looking for that balance. They're looking for a place to just land. It's like, Lord, take me off the rocket ship and let me land. So those children came up for Thanksgiving. Then they went back home, which was so emotional, them having to leave us after being with us for that week. But they had to go and finish out school before Christmas break. And we closed on our house December the 7th, which is my birthday. The same day after we got the keys from the lawyer, we drove to a car lot, traded in our 2 smaller vehicles, and purchased an NV passenger van, 12-passenger van. And when I got the keys to my house and the keys to my car, I called DHS and said, I'm ready.
You're in the game now. As soon as a foster parent gets that 15-passenger van,
Hey,
you're in the
over. So I called DHS and said, hey, I'm ready. I got the keys to the house. I got the keys to the vehicle. Bring my children.
I love it.
So, they had to go through all the paperwork and everything, but then after they finished our school, they withdrew them from school there, and they moved the children here with us. Actually, one of the children they were placed in separate homes. So one of the girls was placed with two younger siblings who did not come to us because they were being adopted by the foster home that had them. So she brought her on her way to vacation up north. So she dropped her off another foster mother dropped her off on the way. And then the social worker was a couple hours behind her, bringing the other two siblings. And they got here, and it was like they were supposed to be here. It's like, where have you been all my life? You're here. You are home. And that's something I have always told my children. As long as the Lord gives me strength, as long as the Lord continues to guide us, you will forever have a home. Even if you get grown and decide to, like they say, you smell your drawers, and you try to act up and you want to move out, you still have a home as long as you want to be here. And so that took us from 3 to 6. Okay. And then they were here, they had to be here for 6 months. And then once the 6 months was up, the adoption specialist came in to do our final paperwork so it could be sent to the AG's office for approval of the adoption. Well, that day when the social worker came, I got sick. And it was like I felt so off. I'm like, something is wrong. Like, what is wrong with me? And I don't even know why I took a pregnancy test. I don't even know where the pregnancy test came from. It probably was so old. It probably really didn't even work. But anyway, so when they came and we finished our adoption packet, I took the test and it was positive. And I immediately called my husband, who was at work, of course, again. And I told him, I said, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. And he was like, you kidding me? Like you're joking. Don't joke. But anyway, I ended up showing him the test, and I ended up making an appointment with my doctor the next week, and it was confirmed we was pregnant. So by that time, 5 years of infertility with 2 failed procedures, with loads of testing, after 6 adoptions, we end up pregnant. And it's like, well, God.
And that's how I met you. That's how I met you in the March 2019 baby group.
Yeah, that's how we met. I ended up pregnant. And it's like, well, Lord, you got a funny way of doing things, but okay. And so we end up pregnant. And so at that time, because in our state, there's a 6-child limit for foster into the home before the home is closed. So our home ended up being closed from foster care. We did all the paperwork with the social workers, and we closed our home. No more children coming from foster care. We're done. Because we knew that these 6 children who was about to get a new baby into the home, we knew that they needed time to settle. Yeah. So we, of course, during this whole time, we continued the therapies. We continued to doing everything that we could do to be able to provide our children with stability. And we knew that the constant visits with the social worker, not for all children, but for some children, caused spikes in trauma. Mm-hmm. And for us in our household, we had 2 children in particular, which every time a social worker came to our home, it was an instant backset to day 1 moving in.
Yeah, and I totally get that, because I was a post-adoption case manager, which means that I was supposed to be there just for kids that had been adopted.
Right.
And I was amazed that parents weren't just set up with a post-adoption case manager. And I usually got people on my caseload that said, like, I'm ready to give the kid back, I'm done. And then I would go in, and I thought it would be so beneficial had I been with them from adoption. But I learned that the parents didn't, like, once they adopted, they didn't want a continuous, social worker to keep coming into their house. They wanted to be able to be a family on their own. So I totally get both sides of that.
Yeah, because I have one son in particular who, every time a strange car pulls up into the yard, if he sees that car before I do, mama, 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 he's instantly running to me. Someone's in the yard. Is someone coming over here? Someone's supposed to be here. So I knew that I had to, at that moment, cut things off, put him back into therapy, do my due diligence to do everything that I could do to help him settle. Because a lot of people don't understand. They think just because you sign the paperwork and it's still in a courthouse and your child is adopted, you're done. And I'll say that, I said it a million times over. There's a difference between being physically adopted on paper and mentally adopted in a child's mind. Just because that child was adopted, I don't know, July 4th of 2019, that's a random date I'm saying, it takes time for that child to move from physical adoption to mental adoption, because they have to process the fact that I'm not going to be taken anymore. That, okay, not only did my name change, but now I can let my hair down. Now I can settle. Now I can relax. Now I can know that there is someone out there who loves me and who is not only saying that they love me, but they are proving it through every single day of loving me, through every single day of correcting me, through every single day of just providing a sense of stability for me. So even though I physically adopted these children at whatever date, I knew that I had to give them time to process the adoption and for them to settle mentally.
And that can take years, or it can take forever. I mean, they may never feel completely settled.
Right. Absolutely. So
okay, how many kids are we at?
We're at 7. So we're at 6 adopted and then biological number 7. And then, believe it or not, well, let me count the days now. On May the 29th, I got a call from the hospital who said I was down as a next of kin for a friend of mine who I had known since grade school, who had battled different things in her life, and who at this time was not able to provide a stable home for her child. And she put me down. So I immediately went to the hospital in the midst of COVID. So I'm there getting temperature checks and everything else, trying to get to the hospital. I get to the hospital, and Mom was there, and me and Mom talked, and I had to wait for DHS or CPS to show up at the hospital. So I was there waiting for CPS, and we end up just talking back and forth and just having a general conversation. And I was there, had to be for about 4 hours. And in the first almost 3 hours, I did not touch the baby, because I knew once I touched her, it was gonna be over. I'm just looking over there, and I'm just like, oh my Lord, what am I doing? What am I doing? So it ended up, the nurse ended up needing me to hold her for a second. And because of COVID, I could not exit the room. So you have me, Mom, social workers, nurse, the baby in the room. We probably already breaking all kind of COVID guidelines right there. We're having a full party in the room. But anyway, and me and the baby stepped into the restroom, and she looked up at me, eyes bright. She just looked, and it's like we did the stir challenge. She didn't blink. She didn't do anything. She just looked. And I knew, and I texted my husband. I said, are you ready to be a daddy again? But long story short, Mom ended up surrendering. Well, I don't want to say surrender. She surrendered her rights to child as well as father. And throughout all these adoptions, I have had great relationships with lawyers, with judges, with guardian ad litem, and so I knew certain people, and I made phone calls. My biggest struggle was that I knew that I could not be a foster parent again because of my other 7 children, and 6 of them who were already, went through that. So my thing was, how do we do it? How do we adopt and provide a home for this child, but at the same time not shake up this children's world upside down by re-entering the foster care world? And my lawyer and the guardian ad litem and the judges, because there was 2 different counties involved, and you know how that can be. So we had to respect each county, each judge, each supervisor, each guardian ad litem. We had to go through the ropes. And once we came to agreements, and because mom and dad did surrender rights, the lawyers handled everything, did everything behind the scene, and literally within, 7 days, she was adopted.
Wow.
And I think that it happened that quickly. I don't know about what everyone's belief system is, but I believe that God has his time and he has a way of doing things, and some things just fall into place. So it was so many key people who worked behind the scenes all at the same time, and that's how it was able to happen as quickly as it happened. So at the time I couldn't leave the hospital until DHS got there. And then once they got there, I had to come back home to my own children that night. But I could not re-enter the hospital because of COVID. I could not go back until she was ready to be discharged. So mom ended up being discharged before the baby. So baby was literally there with the nurses at nurse stations, in the nursery, in the NICU, going back and forth until the hospital would allow me to come back in and get her. And that night, the nurse called me at 8:15 because we were waiting on some testing to come back before she could be released and discharged. They called me and said, the doctor's here, sign off on paperwork, you can come get the baby. And we didn't have a sitter that night. Me and my husband, we loaded up 7 kids into that ENV. We went to the hospital. My husband and the kids waited in the parking lot for over an hour, almost probably 2 hours. I had to go in and do like all kind of paperwork, and I had to sit with the nurses and do feedings and, the whole all 9 yards. And then I walked out of that hospital and I just had a feeling of relief. Mm. And I was no longer worried about what people were going to say, because to be 100% honest, we didn't really tell our family we're adopted again. Us,
no, right?
Again. Hey, we're doing it again. We didn't broadcast it to everyone at the time, and mostly because it happened so fast. We didn't need to hear any naysayers. We just needed to follow our mind. We needed to pray and do what God needed us to do, and that's what we did.
Can I just have you put the pen down because of audio?
Oh.
I just don't want to click on the thing. No, it's good. I actually did that once in an job interview, and I was clicking it so much that they were like, can you put down the pen? And then the whole time I couldn't focus on the job interview.
But yeah.
So that's like incredible. So what, like, did you end up being like, I get that you didn't tell your family because it went so fast. So is that, I know that you did a YouTube video to update everyone. So you basically did a YouTube video because when you weren't able to tell everyone that you had another baby, and were you getting questions about it?
So what happened is that I did a Facebook post, I think a day or two, I think it may have been the next day or the day after, just introducing her to our family. I got so many inbox. And people's like, did you hide your pregnancy? No one told us that you was pregnant. What happened? Did you? And some people were saying, did you adopt? Like, what happened? Where did this baby come from? And like, I was going back and forth with so many people. I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop the inboxes. I'm going to just make this video. I'll tell people, and it'll just be out in the open. But one of the things that I did not want to do was offend her biological mother. because the mother and we are friends, and we still
Right,
talk
you
to this
respect
day.
her,
We still
yeah.
talk because a lot of people may not see it that way, but you have to have a very big heart to do what she did. To say that I cannot provide a home for you, it takes a lot. A lot of people don't see that side of adoption, you know. But my goal was, is, and will always be to never offend her, but to always be a light of love, a light of respect for her. So I actually talked to her before I made the Facebook post and said, I want to introduce the baby to my family, but I don't want to do it if it's going to cause you any kind of, you know, emotional setback, or that's what I don't want to do. And she was okay with it, and then I ended up making a post and I'm making a video.
So how have your previously adopted children handled 2 new babies?
So before we actually said, okay, we're going to do the adoption, that night when I got back from the first time get the hospital, we had a family meeting, and we set like all of the kids down at the table and said that there's a child who needs a home, needs a family, and we're thinking about us being able to be that forever home for her. And of course, they was like, yeah. My oldest son, who's 12 years old, was like, Mom, yeah, you don't even have to say that. Just do it. Just bring her home. Their kids were so receptive. For them, it was never a thought. And I think part of the reason why is that I have always, you know, told them, you guys don't feel like you're blessed just because someone took you in. No, you're blessed by God. God just so happened to bless us to be the ones who took you in. Don't feel like that you owe me anything, because you do not. My reward does not come from anything earthly. And so I've never wanted them to feel like, oh, I have to be happy because I was adopted, you know. No, you be happy because you're loved, because I love you, and I will do everything that's in my power to be whatever love that you need at whatever moment that you need it. And I think because of that, that was one of the reasons why they were so receptive when we talked about the little baby needing a home. The 15-month-old. So she battles between possessive of the baby and not acknowledging the baby at all. So it's either my baby, my baby, my baby, or what baby? So
15 months is a interesting age.
Yeah, she's like, okay, like, is this a baby doll or is this the real thing? So yeah.
So through all the years, through all the kids, through all the kids that came for a short period of time, for a long period of time, ones you adopted, what have been some of your biggest obstacles, either with the system or behaviorally, or just what, when you look back, what have been like, whoo, those were tough days I wasn't sure we were going to make through?
Okay, I think that one of the biggest obstacles for us has been the system. And our social workers, first of all, I take whatever hat I have off to them, because to do what they do and go home and lay your head down at night on your pillow, you have to be some pretty strong individuals. But I do know that the system is overcrowded. There's too many cases and not enough social workers. There's too many social workers and not enough resources. There's too many social workers and not enough support systems. There's one supervisor to too many social workers. So I know that even if a social worker forgets to do something or can't get back to doing something, I know that it does not come out of place of negligence, but it comes out of a place that we, number one, need more social workers. Number two, we need more resources and more support for those social workers. We also need more foster parents who are more diligent, who are more respectful, who will take more time to deal with the social worker and not see the social worker as just a person to call when a kid is acting out, but to respect the social worker for what they are doing and to be a part of the of the solution and not a part of the problem. So I think for me, the biggest issue that we have faced through it all has been the system. But that's just like one of those never-ending stories. How do we fix it? What do we do? What do we not do? And I think that it comes down to every person doing the best at what they are supposed to be doing. That means that I have to be the best foster mother. You need to be the best social worker that you have in your ability to be. You need to be the best social worker's aide that you can be, or the best supervisor that you can be. It's all a big web that's entwined, but everybody has to play their parts. So one of the things that I've always tried to do with every placement is to go a little bit above and beyond with my respect for the social workers. So because they have a lot on their load. You're talking about one social worker who may have a 20 caseload. You know, there's 20 children. There's probably more than that. There's 20 visits every week. There's 20 reports that has to be written. You know, that's a lot. So I've always, like for instance, if my children goes to a doctor's visit, I would not leave them to the doctor had given me a printout of the doctor visit. It had been stamped, and I could put it in the mailbox and send it to DHS. They did not have to ask me where certain things was. Part of me being a foster mother was I need to do a little bit more so that I can be part of the solution and not creating more problems.
It's beautiful.
So then that's just one of the things that I've always tried to do.
I love that. And I love that advice. Foster parents do a lot, you know, they do a lot already, but yeah, I can see how certain foster parents could make a social worker's job easier than other foster parents. So it's a beautiful perspective. So what's been your biggest wins? What have been like those moments where you're just like, this is why we do this?
I think for me, the aha moment, so we are Christians, and I know that that's not everyone's faith. And for the children coming to our home, we had some children who come in who had different exposure to different religions. So my goal has always been not to force Christianity, but to give them an open view of it and for them to make decisions. So I think for me, one of the greatest rewards for me from a Christian perspective is that child learning that I am not only loved by my mom, but I am loved by God. For me, there's the greatest reward. There is nothing greater. Now, this on a spiritual perspective. Now, if we come back down into the secular world, for me, one of the greatest rewards is a child who can come into a room, come into a room, it may be messy and junky, and come in a room full of a million toys, and instead of going to grab a toy, instead of going to grab a remote, instead of going to grab a video game, that child comes and lay on my shoulder. Or that child comes and put his head on my knee and just hug me and say, oh, I love you, Mom. Or you want me to do anything for you, Mom? It's that the greatest reward for me is a child knowing that they have a place in this family. And as long as my children know that, I don't care about what anybody else say. That you can say I have too many children. You can say that, whatever you want to say. But if my children feel like that they are loved, that they have a home, that they are protected, that is my goal. Whether or not they be a Christian, that's up to them. But that is my number one goal.
I love that. Well, I do ask everyone that comes on the podcast how we end the foster care crisis, because there's so many kids going into care. And I think that, you've already shared quite a few, the suggestion of trying to be the best whatever you are, the best foster carer that you can be, making sure that you're taking care of your part. I love that answer. And also, when you had closed your home, officially had closed your home, and a friend happened to put you down as next of kin, and you came in and welcomed that child in, having that acceptance and that openness and being receptive to accepting that child, I think now leaves that child up to have a better trajectory and have their children not enter care, whereas it could have possibly been a different outcome. So is there anything you want to add to ending the foster care crisis? I want to offer you the opportunity to answer, but if you feel like you've answered it, I think you have too.
Okay. Well, I guess the only other thing that I would say is that America has taught us to grow up and grow apart. A mother has 4 children. They go to college. They go to high school. They go to college. They get married. They separate 4 different homes, 4 different spouses, 4 different sets of children, if they have children. And many times there is no point where that family comes back together and rejoin. I think that part of breaking down the barriers of children being taken into custody is us pulling back a nucleus of extended families. I always joke with my siblings and say that if I ever become a millionaire, I'm buying a house big enough to house all of us, and whoever wants to live in it can live here, and we will support each other. We will take care of each other's children. We'll take care of the senior citizens in our family. I think part of us breaking down those barriers is knowing that we have family and friends that we can depend on. It's easy to say or point your finger at someone who may be an abuser today, or an addict today, and say, okay, they're out there doing this. But where's that person to say that I know that you're struggling with what you're doing, but what can I do for you to help you? And I think that if families can come together in that aspect to be a better support system for one another, even if a parent falls and can't provide a home for a child, somewhere, if there is an extended family who can, that child can avoid being taken into the system, because there's family there to not only take care of that child, but to support that parent who's in need. That's just my thought on it.
Yeah, I love that. And, I hadn't thought about it, but I feel like we have grown farther and farther away from these, these bigger families where we split rent, or we split, we help each other out, and we all live close, or we live in the same home and all of that. And speaking from experience, I have 0 family around, and I'm, my husband and I are fine. We're privileged, and but even I have I wish I had somebody to take my child for 4 hours on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So because we do, I feel like kids now are just moving away, and it's very common to have your siblings in a different state, your parents in a different state. So we really do lose a huge chunk of our origin and our support system and our feeling comfortable. That's awesome. Well, you're a rock star, and it is just so cool how God has orchestrated your life in a way that's you must feel like this is totally how it's meant to be, huh?
Well, sometimes I think about, Lord, what are you doing? Can you give me the blueprint? I just want to see what's happening next. Yeah.
Well, so you're not open for more foster kids, though. Now.
Well, the agency know that because I have a great relationship with social workers, so they know that if there is a child that they absolutely 100% cannot place for whatever reason, they know that they can always call me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know. I remember having a few of those, and I, as the post-adoption case manager, I would call the other social workers and I'd say, stop calling her. She doesn't know how to say no. And the kids
Yep.
at home need her to focus on them.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I know the good homes are the ones that sometimes get abused.
Yep. Absolutely.
So how are you doing on the farm? Like how has the farm helped your kids? And
so I think one of the greatest things that we chose to do was move on the farm. There's so much benefit in animal therapy, in equine therapy, in chick therapy. Lately we got baby chicks, and the children that went, it went crazy over them. But there's so much benefit, and I know studies have shown it. I'm just like not like this whiz who know numbers, but studies have shown that children who bond with animals, they have better chances breaking some of the barriers that they're going through. So, and I have seen it firsthand. I'm talking about, for instance, my child who's on the spectrum, who was having multiple episodes a day in the environment that we lived in, to coming to where we are, where those episodes are not daily. They may be once a week or once every 2 weeks. And I think part of that is the environment. You know, like I said before, children need a norm. And providing that norm, whatever it may be for your family that you feel like is beneficial for your family, providing that norm and providing that consistency is what allows a child to be who they are, to let down that guard. For instance, I have a child who literally every time it rains, if it's not lightning, that child asks to go outside. I could be that mom that said, you're not going outside, you're not getting wet, but there's some type of connection there. So who am I to like stand in that gap, but there's so much benefit. Another thing that's probably one of the biggest drawbacks of the farm is that the kids won't stop with the animals. It's like every time we go somewhere, they think we're supposed to bring home an animal. And I'm just like, first of all, you're going to have to get a job to provide for that animal. We're going to be breaking some child labor laws if you go get one more animal. I have a son who, when he first came, had a burial that was up to here. He was never raised in a home with a father. So he completely shut my husband out first day through the door. And he got around my husband. My husband just started taking him out with the animals, introduced him to horses. And he's the kid who my husband started a new job. And in between there, he was off for like almost 2 weeks. And the day his dad went back to work, he cried. Mm. So there is so much benefit in just taking time. It's not always about having the best, being the best above everyone else around you, but it's about being the best who you can be for your children and for your household. Even if that means going outside with this child who wants to go stand in the rain. And even if that means going outside with this child who feel like he absolutely needed a cow, and I bought him a cow because he said he needed a cow. And even though I have to remind him 3 times a day, you didn't feed your cow, you need to feed him before he be somebody's beef, It's just a joke. But, even though you have to do that, but there's going to be some things that you're going to do that may not make sense to you at the moment when you're doing it, but when you see the benefit that child has, that's your reward. So
I love that.
The form is our reward. Yeah.
I love that. I love the emphasis on time in, and just if it's cooking a meal, if it's engaging the kids in stuff you're already doing, like changing the oil on your car or laundry or whatever, just some time in. And then the emphasis on nature. I mean, even if you're in an urban, place and,
Absolutely.
it's not in the cards for you to go buy a farm, get out there. There's programs that are there, and then you can just go to parks and discover things. I'd have to link to it, but my brother was just telling me about this app that's on your phone that you can have your kids, like if you're getting them connected to tablets and stuff, and you feel like they're too connected to their phones or tablets, this is an app that like you take a picture or whatever of what you find outside, so different leaves or a plant or an animal, and it tells you what that animal is and lets you tell them, tells them about that. And I guess it's free. So when your episode's live, I will have to link to that for people, because I just think the whole nature thing, like we've all gotten so disconnected, or we at least need to like very intentionally force ourselves to go outside.
Absolutely.
And so the fact that you can just open your back door and let them out, that's a blessing. But yeah, I just know that the more connected we can be to nature, really the more connected, kids we all are to God and our Creator.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. Well, I love that you bought the farm. I love that it all came together. I love that you got the 15-passenger van on the same day that you got the farm. I didn't even know social workers, like I never even think of a social worker having to bring 3 kids, 8-hour drive. So that's crazy. But you're rocking it out. I really, really, really appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you.
And God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have our YouTube page, but it's very newish. I'll say that. The videos are very newish. So we don't know what we're doing. And I have a 12-year-old who has decided that he's going to be a gamer. So now he's the YouTube king. And so he's doing all kind of editing stuff. And I'm just like, well, I'm sure I can incorporate that some kind of way into education. So go for it, buddy. So we have a page that's called Farm Mama of 8. Farm Mama of 8.
Okay. Well, you have a great rest of your evening. Thank you for getting on the call with me, and tell your aunt thank you too for watching the kids.
All right. You have a good evening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.